My name is Dr. Julie TwoMoon, and I'm a naturopathic medical doctor and an acupuncturist with a practice in Plymouth, Michigan called Seven Directions Center for Restorative Medicine. This video is about what is not normal. A lot of people, I really feel, have become to expect that certain disease conditions are so normal. And by normal, I mean we accept that they occur. We don't think it's at all strange. So this video is about heart disease. Heart disease is not normal. Heart disease is not a condition that we should accept as being normal. We should not live in a world where it is expected and really not that shocking when people we know have simple conditions like high cholesterol, where they're constantly taking medication, to other conditions like blocked arteries, heart attacks, and other cardiac conditions that come from chronic lifestyle problems. Chronic lifestyle problems are the biggest threat to our collective health than anything else in existence. They come from factors that are all changeable, and that's why they're not normal. These conditions are the result of lifestyle factors we've all become so accustomed to having in place that we no longer think it's strange that we do many of the things that we do now, even though less than 100 years ago, a lot of the ways that we live were not in existence. Some people credit this to technology, that we've had such advances, that we have such speedy access to so many wonderful things, that it has dramatically changed how we live. But in fact, technology has done anything but improve our general state of health. 100 years ago, heart disease was an unknown condition. In fact, when the first makers of the EKG came to the United States to sell their amazing new product that could evaluate the electrical conductance of the heart and identify places where it was no longer working, their initial response from doctors in the United States was, "What would we need that for? We don't see heart disease." Ironically, at the same time in history, the per capita butter consumption was 18 pounds per year. That means that each person was on average consuming more than a pound of butter a month, and yet we didn't have heart disease. The other fats that were commonly used for cooking at the time were lard, as in real lard, rendered lard from animal fat, and butter. We didn't use vegetable oils, including olive oil, in our cooking because those weren't commonly found products in the continental U.S. Olives are not a traditional crop grown here. Olive oil only came into vogue when we could begin to ship things over long distances for non-exorbitant prices. Other vegetable, nut, and seed oils still weren't widely used because they didn't keep for very long. Those oils go rancid very quickly. And what we commonly see cooked with now, which is canola, soy oil, and the other sort of amorphous vegetable oil products, were definitely not in use. In fact, canola's own history is that its first use was as an industrial product. It has such a high viscosity and ability to withstand friction that it actually has its origins in coating machine parts because it could withstand the common friction of industrial processes, and therefore it was a great industrial product. But as the shipping industry diminished, because it was its primary use, there needed a use for these copious fields of the rapeseed plant, and therefore the plant's product, this oil, was modified to make it palatable through a very disgusting process of deodorization and coloring so that it would appear as a palatable product because its origin is not palatable. Not to mention that it had to be made non-toxic because rapeseed oil itself is a rather toxic product, and therefore a modification was made to the plant structure, making the quote-unquote canola plant, which does not exist in nature, thus to produce an oil that we consume most commonly as a cooking fat in this country. If you were to draw a graph of the incidence of heart disease and a correlation with the incidence of vegetable oil use in this country, they would mimic each other. The other factors that affect our dietary effects on health, and therefore especially conditions like heart disease, are the ingestion of very, very processed foods. 100 years ago, processed foods were virtually unheard of. Almost everything was made from scratch, and although we ate a large amount of wheat in this country in particular, and we did consume white sugar, the incidence of these conditions was rather minimal. We had other health concerns. There was a lot of susceptibility to infection, and part of that had to do with sort of a non-awareness about how infections get spread. But as heart disease is concerned, it didn't exist. But in our modern world, we know so many people as individuals who suffer from heart attacks and other heart disease-related conditions that we think it is normal, and it is anything but. Heart disease is one of the most preventable conditions on the planet. It starts with lifestyle and diet. We need to kick to the curb all of these vegetable oils. There isn't a single one of them that is truly non-rancid when we're consuming it. I often tell my patients that pasture-fed butter, so butter from cows that were raised on grass, is a wonderful fat. If you can find access to real lard, and you're a person who consumes animal products, then real lard, rendered lard, is another great option. Do not buy what they call lard at the conventional grocery store, because all it is hydrogenated vegetable oils. Kick to the curb the canola, the soy, the vegetable, the Wesson, the Crisco, and consume butter, lard, raw coconut oil from an organic source. And you can also consume raw organic palm oil that is not from Asia, and that's an issue of ethical sustainability. Palm oil from Asia has been associated with extreme conditions for the native wildlife there, including orangutans. So if you care at all about the lives of our fellow creatures, palm oil from Asia is a no-go. Now, there are a couple other options, of course. Olive oil can be used in small amounts when from good producers. I hesitate to say that anything you're going to find at the conventional grocery store is from a good producer. Most olive oil was pressed months before it's reaching you. It has been stored in glass, in the best case, plastic in the majority of cases, and then it has been set in warehouses. It's gone through cycles of heating and cooling because that's the nature of the world around us. And although it may not smell rancid, I think a lot of people have long since been unable to tell what rancidity truly smells like. Most olive oil is in fact rancid. It's never been meant to be used for high temperature cooking, so that is also a no-go. Other factors as far as heart disease goes. Most of our food supply is so incredibly toxic. It's laden with pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and those are both for the genetically modified and non-genetically modified crops. Genetically modified crops, of course, add another layer of dysfunction to the food supply. But in reality, avoiding those by buying non-GMO and still buying conventional foods puts one at risk. The best way to adapt to this new way of eating without having to break the bank and yet help prevent heart disease is to adopt foods that are whole in nature. So become used to eating things as close to their natural state as possible. This means a simple meal of rice and vegetables with maybe some beans would be an ideal and very easy meal to prepare and very cheap to consume. If you are a person who feels like you need animal product, a small amount of animal protein from pasture-raised chicken, grass-fed beef, pasture-raised pork, grass-fed bison, those would be the ideal sources. At this time, I don't recommend people with heart disease go and start consuming copious amounts of fish, especially from the Pacific Ocean. Farmed fish is also extremely dangerous because it is commonly filled with agricultural pesticides due to the fact that farmed fish are largely fed grain as their primary source of ingestion and nutrition. Pacific fish are contaminated with radiation somewhat, and people who live in the Great Lakes might be able to do a little bit of Great Lakes fish, but on the whole, even though it is the primary food suggested by the American Heart Association, fish is not an ideal source for those with heart disease because it's too toxic, filled with toxins, and therefore quite contaminated. Now, the other things to watch for are heart disease and plaque formation in the arteries is not due to cholesterol. Please stop eating low-fat and low-cholesterol foods. That is a complete lie. There is no association. Remember what I said. There was no heart disease when we were consuming over a pound of butter per person per year and otherwise cooking with lard. So cholesterol is not the issue. Do not avoid eggs from good quality sources. Do not consume low-fat dairy. It's pure poison. Low-fat dairy has no nutritional value and should be just absolutely not consumed by any person. It is not a food to make your body thrive or survive, so nix it. Get rid of it completely. Your foods should be full fat from fat that is from good sources, those that we've covered. Definitely, if you eat eggs, eat pastured eggs, yolks and all, the whole egg. Please do not buy products like egg beaters or egg whites in a carton. Those should not be considered food. Once again, that's packaged food. That's pre-made food. It is not food. Avoid packaged and pre-made foods, stressing that fact even further, because these foods have had to have preservative actions done. They've had to have high heat processes done. If they didn't have preservatives added directly to them, they are toxic, they promote inflammation, and they will further degrade the body. The plaque on the arteries forms from inflammation combined with injury to the vessel walls that is the result of toxins and that inflammation collecting in the body, and very often the consumption of too many processed prepackaged foods, and therefore that adds to higher blood sugar levels, higher insulin levels, therefore greater circulating inflammation, and these tiny wounds are created on the artery walls, for which the body provides its natural defense mechanism, which is putting cholesterol on top of the wound to seal it, and therefore the plaque buildup continues. The other things that you can do for your lifestyle is work with someone qualified to lead you through detoxification or drainage procedures. Those are essential because if you have years of built up toxins in your body, you're going to want to provide pathways of exit for those toxins. There is a definite benefit to be done from meditation, chanting, singing, mindful activities. Those are irreplaceable when it comes to heart and cardiovascular health. Exercise is essential, but you do not have to become a marathon runner. In fact, I don't suggest it. Instead, focus on activities like Tai Chi, Qigong, walking, yoga. Those kind of activities will provide the most benefit because they keep you mindful into what you're doing and stretching and moving the body and creating better circulation. Avoid all sodas, artificial sweeteners especially. Artificial sweeteners are toxic not only to the nervous system but to the tissues as well. These are substances that will derail your progress quicker than anything. You will probably have to stop eating at restaurants. I hate to say this, a lot of people don't like to hear this because their schedules are busy, but in fact, restaurant foods are almost all cooked in soy or canola oil. They furthermore are all from conventional food sources, therefore their meats are not pasture raised. Even when they do serve pasture-raised meats, if they are frying them in that oil or using grill oil, they've completely changed any benefit that was possible from those foods. Heart disease is a modern-day condition that resulted from our lifestyle factors changing. It is completely preventable, it is completely reversible, and it should not be accepted as normal. It is not a normal condition. We need to decondition our brain from accepting this as a potential facet of life. We need to no longer accept the conditions that have been applied, and we need to take charge of this. There are nutrients, of course, that can help. Antioxidants are of great value, but you should not just play with those randomly. Please work with someone who is qualified to help you understand what your body in particular needs, where the stress is in your body, which systems are most effective, and how you're going to get that changed. Randomly going and buying copious amounts of vitamins because random websites say that they're going to help prevent or treat heart disease is not only negligent, but it can be rather dangerous depending on the person and their other conditions that are involved and how their organs are functioning. Your body needs to be supported, it needs to be allowed to heal, it needs to be given the tools to do so, and it needs to be given resources. My name is Dr. Julie TwoMoon. This is a video about what is normal, and heart disease is not normal.